All right, our next item on the agenda is the report from the City of Hanford Revenue Measure Committee, Chair Martin Devine and Vice Chair Shane Strawn, regarding the committee's confirmation that there is a need for potential revenue measure. Gentlemen, welcome. And Director of Finance, Mr. Tavares.
All righty, good evening, Council.
Don't know if your microphone is on.
Good evening.
Okay, let's start that over. Good evening, Council, or good afternoon, Council.
Good afternoon.
As you know, the Council gave direction to form a revenue measure committee and gave us direction to, a goal to look into whether we needed to follow through with a revenue measure and also to look at what the needs of the city are. The goal of the committee, at Council's direction, the goal of the committee will be to review the needs of the community and the city's financial ability to meet those needs and to make a recommendation to the City Council if they ultimately support a revenue measure for the November ballot. So the RMC, the Revenue Measure Committee accomplishments, we spent over 20 hours of education and analysis, over 10 meetings. Police, fire, park, streets, code, and other needs were identified and presented by staff. The RMC has prioritized areas. We have identified specific priorities and needs. We adopted a draft expenditure plan, and we voted on whether there was a need for a measure or not, and we provided we're providing other considerations to council. Now, looking at our general fund expenditures here, you can see that the revenues are in red. You can see our expenses are projected to exceed our revenues. And I'll hand this off to Mr. Strawn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So what you're seeing here right now is the tax rates comparable other cities, Hanford, some in Tulare County, some in Fresno County. So as you can see right now, our county base at 7.25%. And right now, as our sales tax is 7.25, no additional sales taxes with the city. It's pretty comparable when you look at other cities. In some cases, in Tulare County, for example, they have a transportation measure, Measure R, that is a half-cent sales tax. It actually supplies for 30 years their transportation needs, infrastructure in that county. That also applies to the cities. Some cities have revenue sharing agreements. I believe Dinuba has that with Best Buy with their warehouse, where they're able to do a revenue sharing agreement on their online sales tax. As you can see, none of them have parcel taxes, but very, very similar. But we're one of the few left in this county, with the exception of Lemoore, who is also putting on a sales tax measure later this year to help, fund their departments and so forth, public safety and so forth. So we're the last holdouts in Kings County at this moment, Lemoore and Hanford. Now on this one here, I want to go a little bit more into it, detail. One of the 32 out of 482 cities in state with no additional sales tax. City of Hanford is a full service city, but several cities without a measure are not. Services like fire, parks, et cetera, provided by other agencies. We are the 7th largest city without additional tax. Now, if you look at these particular cities, we listed 7 of them here. You can see some that have various larger revenue estimates that are on there. Simi Valley, Thousand Oaks, Redding, specifically Redding, and I'll get into that in a moment. But when you look at some of these cities, I'll give you some examples. Camarillo, for instance, if anyone's been to Camarillo, their largest sales tax generator is the outlet mall. Hands down, 40% of the city's general revenue is made from that outlet mall alone. So that's a huge chunk of their city revenue, not to mention their property tax is a huge generator for that city. It's a very wealthy city. If you've ever been there, a lot of different high-scale mansions, of course, are in that area, so they'll get a lot from the property tax. When you look at also Thousand Oaks, everyone's probably passed by there. A lot of car lots, car dealerships, especially luxury dealerships. When you see Mercedes, BMW, when you see Tesla, all these different dealerships that are generating hundreds of thousands in sales tax revenue from these lots, not to mention their property tax. A unique situation with Thousand Oaks as well, too, is that since their inception in 1964, since they were established, the city does not have a fire department, a police department, or a parks department. Their police and fire department is contracted actually out to the county, and they have a separate special district, the Conejo Recreation District, that actually is their parks area, so their parks district. So their revenue is mainly through maintenance and operation that they generate through their, I guess you can say, their general fund, and also unfunded liabilities are low too because they're not paying into PERS. So there's a lot of significance there for that city. Reading, if you've been there, it's a destination city. That city has two factors. One is its recreation benefit. It's along the river. They have a lot of recreation activities. They generate a lot of revenue when it comes to tourism between Seattle, San Francisco, Sacramento. They're one of those destination cities, not to mention that their transient occupancy tax is at 12%, and they have a ton of hotels. So with people staying there, they're generating a ton of revenue for that city and still maintaining at 7.25%. But one of the big factors of these particular cities, and all of them, and you're probably looking at it, each one of these cities, with the exception of Hanford, is along a major highway. So you have Simi Valley, it's along 101. You have Thousand Oaks, 101. You have Reading on I-5. Rockland is on the 80. Even though the 80 seems small, it packs a punch. I mean, you're right there by Roseville. You're right there in Sacramento. That highway, that freeway is generating dollars for those cities. Rockland is 5. Yuba City is 99. Camarillo, 101. And Hanford's a 198. We just don't have that traffic or tourism revenue that you get from these particular freeways because these are beast freeways, so to speak. They generate revenue to these cities, and that's what's helping with their revenue consistently in those communities. So, I mean, as far as that goes, that's when you're looking at those six cities compared to Hanford, they're generating a lot. Now, if we go on to the next one, when you look at the statewide types of sales tax measure, or I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong one. The types of sales tax measures, special measure, vote required for approvals, 2/3 of the votes received. The purposes funds may be used for locked, no future changes without voter approval. The general measures, vote required for approval, it's 50+1 of votes received. Purposes for funds, flexible in accordance with ballot language, citizens initiative may also qualify. So you have the two different tax measures. The one that you can get 50+1, the one that requires 2/3, depending on what you are trying to achieve as far as putting on the ballot. In this case, a general tax unrestricted, governing body approval, counties and general law cities, which we're a general law city. 2/3 on that is required. Charter cities is majority. Transactions and use tax is 2/3. Special districts may not apply general tax. Voter approval requires a majority in this case. Other rules, a general tax election must be consolidated with a regularly scheduled general election of members of the governing body unless an emergency is declared by unanimous vote among those present of the governing board. Moving over to the special tax specific purpose, a majority is required, 2/3 voter approval, and special tax funds must be deposited in a separate account. The taxing agency must publish an annual report including 1, the tax rate, 2, the amounts of revenues collected and expended, and 3, the status of any project funded by the special tax.
Okay, moving on. We had each of the departments come to us and discuss their specific needs in those departments. The police department was things that we found that the police department needed. It was new public safety building. And these are in a particular order, by the way. Right now, equipment, personnel, resources are divided over 3 buildings with a total square foot of 16,972 feet. There's not enough space, storage, holding cells, interview space, break, and meeting areas. insufficient lockers, restrooms, front lobby space, parking spaces, etc. Buildings are antiquated, built in 1948, 1959, and 1976. The dispatch center is located in the basement with no windows or break area, and it's literally dungeon-like if you've been down there. Staffing, we looked at the need for police officers and professional staff. Population calls for service 47,000, violent crime increasing 30%, national standard of 1.5 officers per 1,000 population equals 90 officers. Currently, Hanford is at 65 or 1.08 per 1,000. We need additional professional staff to support additional officers. And we'd like to see our police department become more reactive, or more proactive rather than reactive, excuse me. We also see a need for vehicles and equipment as well. And next up was our fire department. And our fire department has certain goals that they would like to meet, and they like to provide adequate services, provide adequate emergency resources to ensure the public's safety, like to expand the department with future growth. Now, the industry standards response times for the Hanford Fire Department, they're not meeting the industry standards for EMS incidents, which is 6 minutes and 19 seconds, or fire incidents, 6 minutes and 29 seconds. And as you can see there, each year it has decreased as the percentages have increased in not meeting those times. We would like to see increased staffing, vehicles, station, equipment. All of this is needed in our fire department. And moving on to the streets, the city's anticipated funding for paving projects is approximately $2.5 million per year. At this funding level, the network PCI, which is the Pavement Condition Index, is expected to decrease from, I believe this should say 55 to 47 by fiscal year 2029. Due to funding limitations, the PCI has already fallen to 55 in 2024. And as you can see in the bar graph, our deferred costs don't meet with our projected needs. Okay, moving on to Parks and Community Services, I'll defer this to Mr. Strawn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Being someone who served on the Parks Commission for 4 years and having somewhat of an understanding of what's been going on there, I can tell you that a lot of these things have come across us as far as issues that are definitely needed to be solved in here in the community. Parks and Community Service Department full-time equivalent FTE employees per 10,000 residents is 8.9. Hanford is currently at 5.7. So if you're out there, you get a lot of folks that are probably calling you and saying, hey, we have issues in our parks. We're seeing trash. We're seeing weeds. We're seeing something of a concern in our park system. It's because we're not meeting that standard of having the amount of employees that are to the ratio of the amount of parks that we have that are actually being able to help us. So we're behind on that, and we need to get ahead. Acres of parkland per 1,000 residents, 10.6. Hanford is at 3.4. So, I mean, when you're looking at this, the governor has said repeatedly that he wants to see more green space in our cities. And in this case, Hanford is way below the par on this when we're looking at that. And I can tell you that the amount of green space that's required is definitely needed for the city of Hanford. The operating expenditures per capita, 99.47. Hanford is at 39.29. And again, when I first got on the Parks Commission, we just passed the Parks Master Plan back in 2020. It's a 10-year capital improvement plan, identified a $62.6 million need for the city. And so if you can see that, there's a lot to be had when it comes to our parks. These are some of the pictures that were actually shown. I've seen many of these pictures myself over the times. You have the water fountain on the top. It's just completely rusted, completely decayed. You have playgrounds that are worn out. They're going, they're past their life expectancy. Usually, if I'm not mistaken, from what Brad said, I think it's like 10, 12 years, if I'm not mistaken, for the life expectancy of a playground, and those have to be replaced over time. Recently, Earl F. Johnson being one of those parks, that had one of those old playgrounds. We finally got it replaced. In fact, if I wasn't mistaken, the grand jury had a report on that a few years back that it needed to be replaced due to the safety issues and concerns of that playground. Then you look at, on the bottom, you have broken concrete and water sprinklers that are just broken consistently, and it takes maintenance. It takes folks to go out there repeatedly to fix those issues, and that's manpower. It requires employees to go out there and fix. The trash cans, I think in this one you've had homeless folks that have burned trash in the trash cans so many darn times to keep warm during the winter, and it's ruined our trash cans. And then you see the graffiti there, I believe, on some of the bathrooms or some of our park locations that have to be repeatedly, fixed and so forth. So those are things in our Parks Department that they need help on, and so this is one of the reasons we're bringing this forward. Okay, so code enforcement's next. Abating, demolishing structures. The legal process, maintaining and cataloging property is expensive. It is a big issue. City has limited tools, limited funds, and limited time. Needs include additional tools to abate and keep Hanford safe and clean. Code enforcement is part of the pie. It's needed to ensure that citizens, are being helped. That things are running properly in the city. That we're cleaning up, making sure things are neat and tidy. Those type of things. Code enforcement helps make that happen. So, as you can see here, some of the pictures. You have a house that's burned down. It's boarded up. It's just sitting there decaying. It's dilapidated. It's getting worse. It just becomes an eyesore and possibly a location where homeless can then gather and be in that building. And then, of course, other things could possibly happen. The bottom, you have appliances and you have refrigerators and other things that are on the bottom that are just continuing to gather up. These are things that code enforcement actually works on to help make sure they work with the property owner to make sure that these things are cleaned up in an orderly fashion and that we are able to have clean yards, clean streets, those type of things.
Okay, moving on. The revenue measure did an exercise where we identified particular needs, and we determined which departments were priority. So police, of course, was priority one, and we determined different things like staffing, safety, or the building, equipment, the police department being proactive, not reactive, and various different needs in that department. Priority two was fire, and of course, again, was staffing, safety, fire stations, training facility we identified. Priority three was streets. Number one, of course, is roads. Our roads need improvement, rehab, preservation. We need various work on different, we recently had a intersection have a problem here in town. Well, that was something we had identified prior to that happening. Priority four was parks. And, we identified problems such as water fountains, playgrounds need upgrading, splash pads, and just regular maintenance in those parks. Priority five was code enforcement, and we also looked at other needs along with that, which are historic building maintenance, abatement, ADA compliancy, and various other needs. So we did come up with a draft expenditure plan, which shows priorities, a 10-year draft plan based on the RMC priority areas, the National Community Survey, and the staff recommendations. This was voted on and unanimously adopted by the RMC. Now, the draft plan elements, the 10-year results of these for the police department, which was priority one, is 12 police officers, 12 police cars and equipment, 5 professional staff, police vehicle and equipment replacements, and of course, a public safety building. Priority two was the fire department, 5 new firefighters, 9 station number 4 staffing, or station number 4, station improvements and equipment, communications equipment, a training facility, fire engine, ladder truck, fire engine replacement, and a small truck, which we were informed is called a Type 6 apparatus replacement. We added the word small truck because most of us don't know what a Type 6 apparatus is, unless you're in the fire department. Our third priority was roads, and mainly it was focused on road rehabilitation, getting our pavement condition index to 65. Priority 4, parks and community services. We see a need for 5 park maintenance employees, 1 recreation coordinator, equipment and vehicle replacement, existing park maintenance. In addition to what's going on now, obviously, we also believe in existing park improvements. Last but not least, of course, was maintenance and emergency needs. We see 2 code compliance officers, equipment and vehicles, community cleanup, abatement for code compliance, which basically means having a team go out and do some of what needs to be done in areas where it's not happening. We also would like to see some of this put forth on city-owned building maintenance. Okay. Moving on.
So next, you're looking at your estimated revenue based on the March 2024 estimates. So what you're looking here, and we have not made any recommendation. I just want to let you guys know is that we have not made one recommendation on this. This is just to kind of for you to have an understanding of what the percentages are available out there. So there's a 0.25%, which generates a new estimated revenue at $4.8 million. There's a 0.50% at $9.6 million, 0.75% at $14.4 million, 1% at $19.2 million, 1.25% at $24 million, 1.5% at $28.8 million, 1.75% at $33.6 million, and 2% at $38.4 million. So these are the different factors or the different percentages you can go with for
And that's annually, correct?
That is correct. So now we come to our recommendations. So the RMC recommendations were made after presentation from each department, discussion amongst the committee. So during our time, we heard from pretty much all the departments. They've given us all the information we needed. I mean, it was a very extensive, very knowledgeable presentation from each of them. There's things that I didn't even know when I went in there, and I was shocked to see it. I mean, it was a great knowledge and education of those different departments. So one is basically the motion to adopt draft expenditure plan from the RMC, yes, or 2, is there a need for a revenue measure? RMC, yes. So those were the findings that we looked at, and that's why we're presenting this to you today, myself and Chairman Devine, so that we can be able to see what the council's looking to do.
So as you can see, we are recommending that the council adopt a draft expenditure plan, and we are recommending that there is a need for a revenue measure. And on that, I will open it up for any questions.
First of all, thank you. Thank you for Mr. Devine, Chairman Devine, for leading this committee, and Vice Chair Strawn for helping out with this committee. But also I see in the audience many people that were partaking in the committee as well. Raise your hand just so we can see. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 of the 13 are here, correct? You ended up with 13 on this committee. So, I mean, there's an overwhelming, the committee is here in full force. And I just want to thank each one of you, because that was 20 hours, that was 10 weeks, going 2 hours every single week and learning. And I hope it was a very enlightening experience for you. It was a positive experience for you. And I just want to thank you for all the efforts that you did in bringing back this report. I'm just looking at going through, because there were 5 different areas from parks, police, streets, fire, and code enforcement. Should we kind of go over one at a time for council if we have, or do we want to have an overarching general?
We have the overall general conversation first, and
Okay.
if we
Get down into the specifics.
yeah.
Okay. So let's go to the very first slide when you were talking about the first table, I should say. Right here. Can you elaborate just a little bit more? Because this is live streamed, so I think members of the community, your revenue measure committees meetings were not live streamed. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And so maybe this might be a little redundant for the council and the committee, but I think it's very important for us to have those discussions where it's live streamed so the community as a whole can see, the breadth of what we're talking about.
Absolutely.
Can you explain, we are, as you said, in the 32, we are the 32 out of 482, I believe. So we have about 450 cities in the state of California that have and it exceeds the sales tax above 7.25. When we have that local tax, how much do we get to keep? Because currently, 87% of our current 7.2% sales tax goes to Sacramento. So the state legislatures have said out of this 7.25%, 6.25% of that immediately goes to Sacramento. Is that correct? And can you explain what would happen with the sales tax that if it so happens to pass in November, if this is something that we want to move forward with, what would happen with that extra sales tax that was generated or voted upon by the people?
So any additional sales tax revenue should the council decide to enact a revenue measure, that money would come back to the city of Hanford. That would not, so out of that 7.25%, that is the state mandated minimum, 1% comes back to the cities. If there were an additional, I'm going to use 1% because it's a round number. If there were an additional 1% on top of that, the city of Hanford, out of that 8.25%, would receive 2% back to the city. So any special tax that's put on top of that 7.25 would stay here.
So 100% of whatever's been increased is going to stay here and not go to.
Stays local.
It stays local.
Stays local.
That's our
We
money.
have that local control, and are there any strings attached to that sales tax if by the state or anything that we have to spend that money on certain things? Or is it just because of our expenditure plan that we laid out? How does that work?
The 100% would go back to the city of Hanford. The state would not be able to get any of that. So it would all be within the city of Hanford's purview to spend according to what the voters, should they approve a measure.
So if we had a special tax or a general tax, a general tax if it was in the general fund,
Right.
these areas
We'll
that
stay
we've
there.
had in our expenditure plan.
Yep.
Yeah,
All of
and
it comes back to us.
Yes.
Okay.
Can I follow up on that? So I know our presentation stuff as we went through our budget process. There was and I'm sure you received it as well, regarding the capital improvement needs for the city, what was out there. And I saw that, you covered a lot of those same topics that were presented to us as council during the budget process. Do you know the dollar figure based on the information that you were provided, that your committee was able to get, what that total dollar figure in needs are?
I just looked at it from my notes from class, so I can cross-reference while you guys kind of look for that. But what I had in my notes was the emerging needs was at $6 million annually, and that was no safety building. But if we wanted to be at a higher planning level, we needed anywhere from $12 million to $23 million, which would put us at either the 7.5% or the 125%.
So I remember when we had
Noted
those
that
meetings and the
correctly.
discussion, I want to say that number was somewhere in that 140 to 160 million range in needs.
For like the CIP and everything.
Correct.
Yeah.
In just the
CIP?
CIP, correct.
Yes.
Correct.
So can you go to the next chart that you broke down, the based on the percentage of revenue that would be generated on the different? I know I've got you bouncing around, and I apologize for that.
Trying to.
That one right there.
Yeah.
So if we're doing a 10-year plan, is kind of what, if I'm understanding your presentation correctly. We got a 10-year plan. We've got approximately in capital improvement needs, say 140 million over a 10-year period. I mean, kind of pretty much, I mean, based on the information you're providing us, kind of gives us a pretty good path as far as what the needs are.
Right.
And I just want to clarify, and I think this is a good point for the community heard. These aren't wants, right? I mean, we're talking about necessity, meet national standards for our fire department, provide public safety in our police department to meet those national standards for service times, and then all those other, criteria that are there.
And the other thing to add to that, Vice Mayor, is that people don't realize, and one thing that we did look at in our fire department is that we need a new training facility because of homeowners insurance. People don't understand that without a training facility, homeowners insurances are going to go up, and people don't realize that. And so right now, without that proper facility, you're going to see an increase in homeowners insurance going up because of that.
And that also dovetails into the fact that if you provide additional services, i.e. additional fire stations, personnel, that will have an impact on homeowners insurance as well, right? Because of the response times and service that will be provided.
Yeah.
Correct.
Are there any, and I think just to go off of what you were saying, because one of my questions were, what are the hidden benefits to the community, bypassing this, with all these improvements? And I know homeowners insurance is one of them for fire, but and the training facility, the training facility for fire, is there anything that would benefit any of the other categories?
I mean,
those hidden benefits.
Kind of going into fire, you're going to have lower response times. I mean, someone's life, that's precious, right? We all want to make sure that someone's life is saved. With lower response times, I think that is one of the hidden benefits that is available. Our fire department is able to move quickly with them being cross-trained in EMT and being able to reach that person quicker and faster to someone's home and helping them and saving their lives. So that's a benefit, I think, big time. And then when you're looking at the police department, upgraded communications, better dispatch, things that we took tours of. Currently, I don't think people know our dispatch is in the basement. That's not a good
Can
thing.
you go back to that picture, because you did put a picture up of the basement.
I think we did. Yeah, so
Off to the right-hand side.
So if you look at the spaces in here in the police department, you have dispatch that's in the basement to your right, and that's a very cramped location. This is a piecemealed police department. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I believe it's 3 different sections.
Yes, 3 different buildings, which creates an inefficiency. Putting them all in one building would,
Right.
and giving people workspace. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, some guys don't have a good workspace in there, which also creates inefficiency.
So on the left side of the picture, that's the workspace that our officers have. Is
Correct.
that correct?
That is correct. And the other thing too is that they're using currently a restroom as storage. I mean, they have to choose whether or not they need extra storage or to have the extra restroom. And that's something that's kind of in there too. And it's like, it's so outdated that that it's just so compact.
And the center picture is they're having storage in the hallways.
Right. And then if you go out to the records building where they have their records, they've had floods. And if you see those sandbags out there, that's to protect the records that they have to protect by law. Mm-hmm. So basically, if those get destroyed or ruined, that's a big problem for our city. There's liability in that. And so you have those sandbags out there protecting as much as possible. I believe there was a roof leak that I've heard about.
Evidence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and evidence, that's a big problem. So, I mean, we have a lot of problems that we have to fix within that department as far as the infrastructure.
Other benefits, like improving streets, one of the added benefits there would be, when new businesses are looking at a place to locate.
Can I have you hold just 1 second?
Sure.
Just want to stay on the public safety side of things here for a second. Go back to the picture we had. Mm-hmm. I just want to make a comment here because I've done a tour of the police department. And we know it was, really 1976, about that time frame. And if you look at those pictures, the police department has done a phenomenal job maintaining the current buildings that they've had and the environment that they've had to work in. And that's a testament to our staff and the work that they had. But the bottom line is, and although those pictures, you know, I know what the effect we're trying to get, but I want you to look at how well it's been maintained. But the issue now isn't maintenance; it's the size and the ability to provide room for the additional needs of those officers that we need. So I just wanted to make that comment that the public is fully aware that, you know, the hard work and dedication that our staff is. Police department has done to maintain, as well as the fire department. I've been on the tours with the fire department to maintain those facilities is, you know, amazing. But with the bottom line is we're just outgrowing.
Yeah, they've outgrown that facility some time ago, and they have done amazing work with those facilities. But it's now to the point, if we're going to grow our police department, our city's growing. We need to grow our police department. We've outgrown this building long ago. Continuing forward, it won't function properly.
And I don't know if council remembers years back when Chief Sever was still here. One thing that they proposed was a telecommunications upgrade, or the communications upgrade. That was around $700,000. So every time you hear, you know, whenever you see they're trying to save money, something happens, and they've got to put that money now towards fixing the problem that's in the current facility, and then they have to start over. So every time it's always starting over on something. So you can never save because they're fixing a problem that's due to the outdated facility that we have.
I think just even for a future vision of our police department, you know, currently they're in 3 different buildings. 3 different buildings. It would be nice to have everybody all under one roof, that we have where investigations, where, you know, where our patrol, where they are able to have those workstations, our dispatch, everything all under one roof. That'll be improving communications as well. That an officer, I know on my ride-alongs, we're doing something, you know, in this part of the building, but then when we're writing a report, and then we have to go to the evidence room, we have to walk across the parking lot to get to where the evidence is being stored. And so I just think that looking down, we would want the best for our officers, we want the best for our firefighters, and we need to have those that where we can put them all in one area.
And then just one thing real quick too, for the fire department, you know, population wise, you should be looking at 1 per every 10,000 people in a population. We're at 60,000 people roughly. And so right now we have 3 one per every 10,000.
One station.
One station per every 10,000 residents. We're at 3 right now. The previous one prior to 2018 that took place was like a 30-year gap almost. And so it's like it tells you how long we've waited to put in a new fire station in the city of Hanford. 30 years prior to 2018. It's a long time.
I think another thing to add to that, too, in that conversation, and I think we've all heard it, but I think the community needs it as well, is, you know, we just purchased one, I know for sure. I don't know if the second one got ordered yet now, a new engine. I believe it has. You know, they're $1 million a piece. And it's not the cost of them, it's the turnaround time to get them. On average, I think we're in somewhere to 30-month. By the time you know, 33 years, 36 months.
36 months.
The chief's giving me the signal, so 36 months turnaround time. So if we order it today, we aren't going to see it for 3 years. And you know, I think that's that. And I'm thank you for being patient with me. I think this is the message that the community needs to hear: is these are needs. These aren't like pie in the sky wish list. Love to have all this extra stuff. This is stuff that where we have fallen short, I would say, in the recent years and moving forward.
I mean, even if you look at our parks department or the parks, look at the water fountains. They're rusted and out and destroyed. You can't even drink out of those. So
I want to get to that a little bit later. But speaking of fire too, you know, Station 1's on Grainsville. You have a train blocking Grainsville at any point of the time during an emergency. The response times, where is the response time? I mean, on the west side by Sierra Pacific High School and by, you know, Centennial, you know, if you have, we have how many trains a day that come through our community? And, excuse me? 40 trains a day that come through our community. And there's times where they have to wait for a train and they block 3 or 4, intersections from Fargo to Grainsville down to, to Lacey. And we are, and if in an emergency, we need to have that Fire Station 4, which is on the west side by off of Centennial in Grainsville, in that area, to treat and meet those needs.
Yeah, I've actually been a witness to seeing the fire truck waiting for the train. And, as a bystander, you don't know what they're responding to. So my thought is somebody could be on the other side of those tracks a mile away having a heart attack, and these guys can't get there right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sorry, we have been talking a lot. I apologize if their council members have some questions or concerns that they would like to address in regards to public safety.
No, I don't have any questions or anything. I'll just do feedback after public comment a little bit later on.
Okay.
No questions at the moment.
Okay. Let's go to roads.
Okay, yeah, as I was saying earlier, one of the benefits of having good roads in the town, which most people wouldn't think about, is when new businesses are looking at a place to locate, one of the things that they will evaluate is the condition of the roads. Not only that, but how many people want to drive down a road and cause damage to their car? How many people want to live? Look at Ash Avenue there. Would you like that in front of your house? That's got a PCI of 18.
Out of 100.
Out of 100, yes. Improving our roads, keeping our roads nice, also lends to property values. Developers look at the quality of our roads when they're looking at putting in a new development in our city. As our city grows, those are various aspects of it. And we're looking at taking this up to an average of 65. And that's going to take a lot of work and a lot of money.
How much did you say per year to get, or currently, if you go back one slide?
I think it was.
So we're looking at, we are currently, 2025, our roads are at 54, correct? Am I understanding this graph?
So right now, yeah, 54, 55,
The PCI, and it's going to be gradually going down.
47. We want to be at about
It
65.
could potentially decrease more than that as well. But right now we're at well, I believe that should say 55, and it will decrease to 47 by fiscal year 2029.
Right.
I believe it's $6 million that we need to,
Bring it back up to par.
yes.
Well, I think this is a great chart too, as well, as you look at the current PCI index, if it's 54, 55, and then let's go at the 10-year, window that we're talking about, 2035, 2034. I mean, it's down to 38. I mean, on the current path that we're on, I mean, that speaks volumes of the need, again, not the want.
But currently, did they discuss when you had streets come in, like how much do they currently spend on our roads in our current budget?
So one thing that they did tell us is their budget has not been increased. I believe it's like been 10 or 12 years. So if you can only imagine their budget not just being level for that long, and then being able to only do certain things to fix roads, such as crack seals, slurry seals, things of that nature. I mean, the goal is for the life expectancy of the road, of course. And so when you don't have the tools and the resources to make that happen, because you've had a budget level the same for 10, 12 years, I mean, the quality of roads are going to deteriorate over time.
Costs are rising, and no more money. We can't afford to stretch it that far.
And I was told that we have, and I was shocked when I heard this, 219 miles of road in the city of Hanford. Is that, am I? 200. Oh, I'm sorry. I was low on that. 231 miles of road in our city. You know, people say it's our small city, but there's 231 miles of road in our city that we are responsible for keeping up. And we are heading closer to PCI of 41 in the next 10 years, or what was it, 38? 38. To me, that's unacceptable. But we don't also have the money to make it acceptable. And if we're looking at in our road budget what we currently spend, you know, I was also told it was like $1 million a mile. Is that pretty accurate? $10 million for new construction, but just preservation, we're looking at, depends on the treatment.
Yeah, because they were talking about fiber seals. Fiber seals, if I'm not mistaken, or fiber changes were better. That's, if I'm not mistaken, the fiber seals were the better ones that were to go with. And now because of the costs going up, those are now becoming almost impossible to go with.
But to also, as the roads deteriorate, those costs are going to rise as well. So, you know, the sooner we get to these to repair them, the less it's going to cost.
Well, the hidden costs are going to be also our alignments in our cars,
That's right.
our tires, you know, all of these other issues that are going to put more of a constraint on the car owner over time because our roads are not at par.
Right.
And even average, I would like to see them above average, to be honest with you. But I mean, $6 million a year for the next 10 years just to get it above to that 60, 65 PCI.
I just want to see us get up to that 65 at least and work from there. You know.
Yeah, that's our initial, I would say that's our initial goal, but I don't want to stop there. And I don't want to be in it where we're just maintaining at 65.
Sure.
That's, hey, let's talk parks. You had some things that you wanted to mention.
Yeah, so a couple things. I mean, the employees, I mean, I know the previous council, if I'm not mistaken, helped alleviate some of that pressure by hiring some additional employees to help with some of the issues with maintenance and keeping the, you know, the grass mowed and the trash, you know, removed and so forth. But as we continue to grow, the amount of park space ratio compared to employees is just, it's too much. And so we need to have more employees to work for our additional, you know, for the parks that we currently have. And so right now, as people go out for parties or, you know, in our parks, or if they're going out to play or whatever, they're seeing these things deteriorate. Their playgrounds are getting ruined. The bathrooms are not, you know, getting upkept. It's because you have maintenance people that are having to go all across the entire city to all of our different parks, and there's just not enough time to get everything accomplished. So in this case, when you're looking at the number of employees, we're going to need more employees in order to compensate so that we can be able to have our parks maintained a lot better than what they are now.
What are the pictures? Because I think that's just speaks volumes.
Yeah. So if you look at the water, I remember we dealt with one of these situations a few years back in Co-Park. You know, you're seeing a lot of these old water fountains that are deteriorating pretty rapidly. They're rusting. It makes the park look bad. I mean, the residents don't like it. Obviously, no one likes to see that. It just shows blight, in my opinion, when you look at a park like that, when you see a water fountain that's deteriorated like that with rust.
And that's just not one water faucet in a park, because I've seen it. I've seen it at the Bob Hill Sports Complex down on the football field. I know in neighborhood parks you see it this way. Co-Park you see it this. So it's not just this picture. I just don't want to think for people to think that
this isn't the only one, right?
This is not. We just went ahead for a photo op and took a picture of one. No. You know,
I've seen them personally when I was on the Parks Commission. We've had them come through. And those were things that we needed to replace. I can testify as well too, broken sprinklers throughout the entire park system. Centennial, Lacey, all different places, different parks, where we've had to have maintenance crews go out and repair those sprinkler heads because they just become such a problem because people are either breaking them, you know, when they're out there, or something of that nature will just go out and ruin the sprinkler head. And so now we have maintenance crews that have to go out there instead of, we have to decide whether we need to go mow a lawn over here or repair the sprinkler head over here, which can take a while to fix. And so those are the problems that we face. And then you see the graffiti on our walls there, or the burning, or some, from homeless. Those are things that take time to clean up, and takes money and resources to make that happen. So,
And again, this speaks not only to the quality of life of the residents, but again, when businesses are looking at locating in a city, another thing they look at, not only streets, but our quality of parks.
right.
Speaking to the quality of life of residents, when they want to go and enjoy a park, they want to have a beautiful place, nice, clean, upkept, to enjoy time with family or play sports. And our guys are stretched thin right now. And as Mr. Strawn was saying, when there's graffiti, when there's damage, when there's things of that nature going on, it takes them away from tasks of mowing the lawn and regular maintenance
Taking the trash.
because they are stretched thin.
I mean, just even walkability, walking paths. I know it was once one of the priorities that you had. It's just like walking paths. I mean, that's a hidden benefit as well. Getting people out there that they feel safe, getting that exercise, whether it's at dusk or early morning or in the afternoon, that they're able to, have a designated area to walk, get that
Absolutely.
exercise. And
And we have some great parks in our system that have that walkability feature. Centennial, Freedom, those are some good, nice parks that have walkability that people can go to and be able to walk at. So,
but all our parks should
in all of our parks.
No, but I'm saying all of our parks should have that walkability, those paths, and to, have a place where, that exercise can happen.
I do want to stress one of our main aims when it comes to parks and community services was maintenance of parks.
Right.
This is going towards needs and not wants. There's some who think that Heroes Park is going to be a part of what we proposed here. We did not. We're looking at needs. We're looking at things that need to be brought up to date now.
Of our
Not
Correct.
of our
Yes.
current
This is
parks.
maintenance of our current parks.
We're not looking to future things. Now, there may come a point in time where a council may deem, hey, everything's looking pretty good in the city, and decide what else to do with this revenue. But that was not our goal. We
So
did
the
not look.
goal of the committee was our top priority
Yes,
is to address
our needs.
the needs,
Right.
because our needs are so great.
So let me ask that question because let me ask that question. I think because it's critical to hear. My understanding, if I'm hearing you correctly, the three priorities, and I would kind of narrow it down. I mean, it's really comes down to two, is what you've been talking about, and that is public safety and roads. Then beyond that, there are some other ancillary areas, which parks would be included in there as well. Maintenance and things of historic buildings and that. So my understanding, police, fire, streets, top three priorities of where we're at right now.
Yes.
Right. Those are the big things we need to take care of now.
Yes, and another hidden benefit of taking care of the streets is it improves the ability of our police and fire to respond. If they've got torn up streets, they're not
Right.
they're not getting there as quick.
So during your discussions with these priorities that you have listed here, and I understand parks, you rank it as being fourth in priority. It's kind of what the committee has come back with. Of the other top three, meaning police, fire, and streets, where's parks? Is the discussion from the committee, I mean, looking at if this measure were to go forward? Because I'm hearing, I'll just tell you from what I'm hearing from the community, I think the general consensus is if it's a public safety and streets type of measure, the probability of passing is greater than if you start adding in other departments. I'm just kind of curious what your take is on that.
We see these as, by priorities.
Okay.
I wouldn't say that we said it's only police or only police, fire, and streets, but we see needs in parks and code enforcement and other needs, so to speak. Priority 1, obviously, is police. Priority 2, fire, and 3, streets, yes. But there are other needs there as well. And those are costs that we're not going to be able to meet going forward.
Mr. Vice Mayor, one thing I want to tell you is, or say, these 5 priorities right here are the quality of life for our
Quality
city.
of life issues, yes.
These are the basics of quality of life for the city of Hanford. And parks is part of that. And you can't single out one or the other. You got to have, if you're going to do your part, if you're going to do your fire, if you're going to do your police and your roads, you've got to maintain those parks too. The current parks that we have right now, it just, the way things are going, it would not be stable. It wouldn't.
Well, I think it's important, and you've mentioned it many times, both of you, and I know it's conversations that I've had with constituents, for the last few months. It's quality of life. What do we want? What type of quality of life do we want our community to offer? And, this gets back to, this is a 10-year plan. Hope I'm still around in 10 years, but I mean, this is for our future. This is for our, where we go and how we present ourselves. And it's going to make a difference across the board when we're talking growth and development and all those type of things. Improvements are definitely going to show a vested interest in the city, showing that we care about our city.
Absolutely. I think also improving these areas and improving that quality of life. When you have a fire department that has good response times and your homeowner's insurance goes down, it's not getting too costly. Those types of things not only speak to the quality of life, but those also attract businesses from outside the city to come here. I know people are always speaking of what businesses they'd like to see locate here. Well, if we have a good community with a good quality of life, we have a well-staffed, well-trained police and fire department, good roads, nice parks, those businesses are going to come here.
So I'm going to ask a question. So your committee, on your 10-year draft plan, voted unanimous to move forward with the draft plan,
The plan,
10-year cycle, correct?
Yes.
The expenditure plan.
The expenditure plan. So what you didn't address was, how did the committee vote regarding the consideration of a revenue measure?
That was a 9-3 vote with 1 absence.
Okay, and so one thing we haven't talked about, and it's worth having the conversation about, is it was obviously not unanimous. It was a majority, no doubt. What were the concerns of those 3?
One of the concerns was that the tax measure may not pass at this time. Other concerns were that the spending could be cut and changes could be made in order to live within the budget. I believe, I don't want to speak for those 3 people particularly, but that's what I gathered from their comments.
Because I understand that you were at the end of the, I'm sorry, Chris, go ahead.
Mr. Vice Mayor, in attachment 4, all members of the committee were provided opportunity to have their considerations in there as well, so that those may be covered as well.
And that's what I'm looking at right now, and that's what prompted the question. So my understanding was the 12 members in attendance, you were all given stickies, Post-it note stickers, whatever you want to call it, and you could write your comments as far as where they were at. And it's just so the public kind of hears or understands some of those comments. Public safety, quality of life measure. That was kind of the top one that caught my eye. Number 2, there was discussions in here regarding what that proposed revenue measure might look like, as far as their opinions. The thing I found, problematic were the council's roundabout is a total failure. Salary cuts across the board. City council past practices make it difficult to trust government and spending in the right manner. Advises city council to avoid controversial issues moving forward. There's a long list of issues that lead to distrust in city governance. So when I read those, and those are, I would assume, are probably of that percentile that were not in favor of the measure, I say that because I don't want to mix apples and oranges. And this is the easiest way I can say it. First and foremost, again, I came the last night of your revenue measure committee meeting to thank everybody for their time and participation. And I say that again tonight. Doesn't matter who those 12 were, but the importance that they dedicated their time, commitment to the city to come up with all this. I think everyone, in their heart of hearts knows. There's been comments made that the city has a spending problem. No, the city has a revenue problem. And that needs to be said. And that's a hard message to hear sometimes. But we're hearing it tonight. We're hearing about the revenue, the needs of the revenue. It's easier to look at the negative than it is the positive. And this, to me, it's so much easier to look at the positive than the negative. To look at what the quality of life will be for us moving forward. Okay, when we're talking police, fire, roads, parks, code enforcement, those are the 5 things that you came back to us with and said, hey, we're deficient here. So I appreciate that. Some other comments that were made in there were talking about sunset clause. So I'm going to look to our finance director. I don't know if we're going to want to discuss this as tonight or as we move forward.
June 4th, staff has planned to bring back an action plan with a potential consultant to discuss with City Council.
Perfect. Thank you. Look forward to that evening. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Also, I'm looking at the same import, and you mentioned, Vice Mayor Kyrus, you mentioned salary cuts across the board. In looking at salary cuts across the board, whether let's say a 10% cut, because I believe it was something like 10% cut across the board, that would save $2 million. What could we do with $2 million with the needs that we have? And 10% cut across the board, that's 10% cut on our refuge employees, our streets employees, that are making, $21, $22 an hour on our refuge trucks. And then we cut 2%, then you're making more money at McDonald's than you are making for the city of Hanford at less, because you would be making less than $20 an hour. And so when I look at, so we save $2 million, and it's just and I'm not here to give a math problem, but it just like in 10 years, that's $20 million. In 40 years, that's $80 million. But currently, we have $140 million of capital improvement projects. So I don't see that a salary cut across the board is something to even be considered, because it's not that large of a chunk of money to address the needs. Maybe that's one fire engine and a couple of police cars this year. Next year, it's 2 miles of road. Next year, is that the pace that we want to move forward? And if we have that PCI index on the roads gradually going down, I don't see that being a viable option.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
The one thing I will, just to piggyback off that for a second, is that not only do you have the quality of life, but the city is a customer. It's customer service. We're here to serve the public. Okay, our job is to make sure. Hey, we want to be out there to make sure that your bills are getting taken care of. That your the code enforcement's taking care of the issues that are happening out in the neighborhoods. That we're here to be a customer based city. Our job is customer service. When you cut along those lines, $2 million, that's $2 million less to good customer service in the city of Hanford to somebody. And if people think it's bad now, it would only get worse.
Do we want to, do we want to cut 10% across the board and for our police officers, our firefighters, and how are we going to be a destination for our police and fire to stay and have the longevity in a career here when we chop off 10% across the board as suggested?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
if I could address this a little bit. As cities around us increase their revenue and put these special taxes, these city taxes in place, they're investing in their police departments and their fire departments. One thing that I see when they invest in their police departments, crime rates do go down. Mm-hmm. If we cut our police department and don't increase our police department, those crime rates are going to increase. Those people are going to leave those cities surrounding us that have the money that invest in their police departments, and those people are going to come here, putting more of a strain on our employees, our police officers that work in our city. We cannot continue to do that and expect to keep good police officers here. We have great employees in this city in all departments, and they work hard. Mm-hmm. I can tell you our fire department, compared to some other cities, does a lot more for less money. Mm-hmm. If we want quality employees and we want to keep these people here, we can't cut their pay. We can't cut how many employees we have. We're a growing city. The state of California mandates that we grow. We cannot stop growth. We have to grow. And as we grow, we need to improve our police department, our fire department. We need good streets. We need good parks. And that all speaks to quality of life.
Can we go back to the initial table that showed all the different cities and what their current sales tax rate right here? So, it's like, why can't we be like Visalia? Or why can't we be like Kingsburg? And, when we look at Kingsburg at a 7.975, they immediately, and plus they added another 1%. And I know, Chief Perkins, you're from Kingsburg, and I have family from Kingsburg as well. That 8.975%, they cut off 6.25, and then Kingsburg is getting over 2 3/4% that they can put into their community to have that downtown effect, that that safety. I remember when I first started thinking about this on Facebook, the Measure E that Kingsburg passed, they had their committee, on their live feed, and they had an oversight committee, which I think it is very important to have some sort of oversight when it's the taxpayers' money, to have some oversight to see making sure that we're going by this expenditure plan, making sure, and just those conversations that the chiefs would go to the oversight committee and say, hey, this is what we did with the money in the past, that accountability, this is what we need, this is how much the homeowner's insurance, and that video was very telling to me that this can work, and we are committed to making sure that if the voters vote for a sales tax increase, that we are going to be good stewards of their money, and we're going to see to it that it gets spent correctly and for the betterment and to the improvement of the quality of life in our city.
Mr. Mayor, the other thing, if I may add, if you look at the city of Kingsburg at their transient tax, they have a 12% transient tax. Mm-hmm. Kingsburg is somewhat of a destination city. It's one of the Swedish towns that you would find in Central Valley. People find it unique, charming. There's a lot of great little shops there that people like to to go to, and they have festivals and things, and they have hotels that they started building. They raised their occupancy or their transient occupancy tax, because more people, it's becoming a destination city. More people will stay there. We're going to generate more revenue from that.
But that transient occupancy tax is also voted on by
Sure.
the citizens of that city.
Right.
So that would be something, if that ever came back, we would have to go to the citizens and say, hey, do we want to do this? We have a lot of hotels that are coming in. Do we want to increase our 8% that we're currently at to whatever that variable is? But I think if we look at all of those cities, if you take that third column, that sales tax, and you see Porterville, 9.25%. 6.25% goes to Sacramento. 3% comes back to Porterville. You look at everything, you subtract 6.25 from all of those large numbers there.
Now,
That's what that city receives in their sales tax revenue. And we are currently at 0.95. And we are doing a hell of a job to balance our budget for the next 2 years for fiscal, and we have a great finance team that is making sure that we balance our budget. Yes. That we are living within the means that we are currently given. But also, I think about past councils. Why did at some time, decades down the road, that they might have kicked a can here or there, or they didn't address it, is because the revenue was not there for them to address it.
Mr. Mayor, may I also throw in another thing in here? This may be the unpopular opinion with some out there, but it's also because we've only had council members that serve one term and then gone. One term and gone. And a lot of times when there's no continuity, there's no consistency, there's no knowledge within. And so what happens is you get a council member who serves 4 years, either defeated or decides to leave. And what happens? You take that knowledge, you take that bit of experience that they've had, and they leave. And now you have to start over again. And it's just repeatedly starting over again because you don't have that knowledge or experience to retain or that continuity on the council. And so
That's a whole other discussion for another night.
Yeah.
that's to add because
I
it's very
understand.
important to
But
understand.
I mean, just as past councils, that revenue was not there for them to do the necessary improvements that they needed to do. And as Vice Mayor says, we have a revenue problem. Sure. And we don't have a spending problem because every year we come back with a balanced budget. We are living within the means of what we are given. Sales tax number one, we send it over 2-year budget cycle, almost $250 million to Sacramento. We keep $16 million. When we look at our number 2 source of income, and that's our property taxes, when only we keep 6% for the city of Hanford, 94% goes outside the city of Hanford. So we're looking at, we are living within our means. And people may not agree sometimes with how this is spent or that is spent, but when we look at here, I'm glad that you brought this up. And maybe, Chris, if you could help explain this spike in 2025.
The spikes.
I'm looking at the orange, the bar graph.
The spikes are due to one-time monies, so ARPA, and then expenditures here due to ARPA and other grants that we get, just one-time monies.
Okay.
So yeah. I think let's go to public comment.
And I would be interested because I know there is a lot of members of the committee here. What are your takeaways? What is the insight? What is your insight what are the eye-opening things? So I'm going to go ahead and open up public comment. Yes, I'm sorry.
Very brief. Just, we've mentioned the expenditure plan several times. Just wanted to let individuals who might be online or even here in the audience know that the agenda packet does contain the costs associated with that. So if individuals are curious about there's an expenditure plan in place and what might that cost, that is included as an attachment within the agenda.
Within the agenda item. And will that be also, that is also on the website as well, separately from agenda and minutes, or is that going to be on the revenue portion of the website?
Not sure if
Revenue
we have
measure?
it posted on the revenue measure site yet. It is included in this. It is online because it is in the agenda packet itself. But
I'll have to double check on that.
Okay.
just want to make sure people know, we talk about these projects. There is a cost associated with it, and we have provided that information.
All right, so at this time, I'd like to open up the public comment section. Remember that this is just for the revenue measure item only, and each member will have a maximum of 3 minutes allowed. And please begin your comments by stating your name and providing your city of residence.
Dennis Ham. I live here in the city of Hanford. We're talking about revenue sources and lack of revenue sources. About 10 years ago, there was a large industry that wanted to come into the community, and in order to come into the community, they promised to be self-taxed. That's the marijuana group. What happened to all that revenue that was supposedly going to be generated and given to the city and also used for a certain project? I don't really hear very much about that. I'd like to know what happened to it.
Hi, Anna Berkshire. I live here in the city of Hanford, and I was on the Revenue Measure Committee. And just as I was listening to the discussion, there were just a couple things that popped out that I kind of wanted to mention. One thing that I mentioned when we were listening to the parks speak, one thing I suggested, and this is just my own personal suggestion, was what about adopting a park? And that had been taken into consideration, but never did it follow up on that. So that was just a personal suggestion of mine. But one other thing that came up a lot when you mentioned the sticky notes, I'm glad you mentioned sticky notes and you did mention it, but there was a lot of us that mentioned the oversight committee. If this should pass, then an oversight committee should be put in place to make sure. And the other thing that you mentioned too, and part of the discussion, the way I understood it, and maybe I understood this incorrectly, but the capital improvement projects are not part of this discussion. So if this should pass, then the spending is not supposed to be for the capital improvement projects. That's totally separate because the spending plan was created, but capital improvement projects aren't there because it's improvements. Is kind of how I understood it. So this is not considering any kind of improvements. The other thing that was mentioned, I just wanted to clarify for the streets. And, we talked about the PCI. And it was discussed to the way I understood it, and I have my little chart here, that to keep it at 55 was the $6 million additional. To get it to the 65, it was a $9 million additional. So I just kind of wanted to clarify that because I know those numbers were thrown around. But to keep it at the 55, it was additional $6 million. To get it to the 65, it was $9 million additional. And then the other thing that kind of came to mind was the police department. When they gave their presentation, they mentioned a new building, and they said they went and visited the new police department in Los Baños, and they said that that kind of was what they were looking at, that would fit for us. And then the number of 50 million was thrown out. And that kind of seemed a little bit high to me. So I went online and I found a little bit of information on that building. And according to what I've read, it was supposed to have been finished last year. I don't know if it actually was finished last year. I didn't see that. But I did see that they requested 30 million for that building. And then there was an article that said 27.5 million. So, but we're saying 50 million. So, I mean, that just kind of seemed high. So I just wanted to throw that out there that I did look into that. And I'm just looking to see if there was anything else in it. But so those few things popped out. And yes, I agree that, the departments are doing their best. They're doing a good job. And thank you.
Thank you. Also, just later on in the agenda in the regular session, there is a proposal to go out and look at what are the needs of the police department, to then kind of see and kind of put in parameter, this is the space, this is what we need, and this is potentially what the cost would be. So maybe 50 million is we're seeing where that number is, but to zone in on what the exact number is, that is up for later discussion.
Bob Ramos, I live here in the city. I was also on the Revenue Committee. Point of interest that was said over here regarding the fire department training facility, because we do not have a training facility. The city of Hanford, as a former fire underwriter, the city of Hanford is paying the penalty of not having it right now in your rates. If we do get that built, the rates will come down, not go up. Just wanted to correct that. In the potential sales tax revenue information that was passed out before, it says on here, current general fund revenues do not meet budget demands. Now, most people look at that, and I'm talking to the voting public out here, that won't ever see any of this information. They'll just get a ballot and make a vote. So they read, they want a sales tax increase. General fund revenues do not meet budget demands. So what does a family do? They cut back. They don't go out and say, well, I'm going to go down to City Hall and they're going to give me some extra money. No, they cut back. So right there says the whole thing. You've overspent. You've overspent in years past. You've overspent. I feel that the public is not going to. I was one to vote no on this, and the reason is the timing. I was one to vote no. Not that I'm against its revenue. I am, but not at this time, because I'm hearing from the public. I've asked them, would you vote for a sales tax increase? Small amount, to help with all this, and they're saying no. Why? The roundabout, big deal with them. The canine, a big deal with them. Lawsuits, past lawsuits, future lawsuits. They're upset about all that. The the tip-in fees that Mr. Kivers voted for increase. That's going to increase their money, their payment to the city. The water bill going up. All those things were taken into consideration, but the roundabout and the dog and prior lawsuits, they're upset. Helena, they're upset about that. That's a lot of money, $12.5 million that we spent. If we hadn't spent that, we wouldn't be here probably. So from that standpoint, I say no, not now. Let's get a different environment, get more trust before the people. Maybe in a year or two, we'll send this through, because I feel that we need to reinforce fire and police and streets. I learned a lot about streets. I didn't realize the situation there, and some of the other things that we need. But police, public safety is most important to me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ramos.
Rusty Brookshire, Hanford. I was the guy that voted no also. The water fountain. Whoever approved the water fountain, some department head, should be fired. You don't put metal with water, okay? You put stainless steel. Bad management. Bad management. You're asking us for a lot of money. With the increase in water, sewer, you're asking us, and then you're doing this too. The police department. I looked up the other day. New York City has 77 precincts. They're not under one roof. It'd be nice, but you don't have to be. The fire department's not under one roof. They have communication. Okay, what's the problem there? The evidence building, it has sandbags. All you need is a rain gutter. A rain gutter. How about some remodeling? Save a lot of money.
Thank you, Mr. Brookshire.
Hello, members of the council. My name is Victor Chavrine Jr. I believe that we should hear all or a plethora of voices regarding the measure. And so I was one of the people that voted yes. You've heard obviously from the 3 no's. But I wanted to come up here today. I'm a resident of Hanford. I stand before you today as a supporter of a general sales tax being added to the November ballot. We are a moment of 35 years of inaction in the making. Do I want to be paying more for goods and services? No. Truthfully, no. But if it means a police force that is fully equipped, fully staffed in a building that is made for them and their size, if it means a fire department staffed more appropriately compared to national standards that can meet and lower their response times, if it means a streets without grass growing in the middle of it, because my street home does, if it means if it means parks that doesn't have broken equipment, then hell yeah, I do. I will pay more for goods and services if it means that the quality of life for our people can change. If a fire were to break out at Walmart today, where the entire fire department will respond due to current staffing and for the safety of their men, and a fire were to break out at my house 15 to 20 minutes later, because of our current staffing levels, my house will most likely be gone. And it's no fault to the fire department. It's not. It's the inaction from the last 35 years of us being able to not staff our fire department accurately that will cause that. And it will be a devastation, not to myself, obviously just to myself, but of what's going on in our community. And that can happen. Take a police scenario of a live shooter or anything in our community that forces police to respond heavily. Where can they respond out? Where else can they do in our community in those different scenarios? Our committee has provided a 10-year plan, and I believe that the voters of our city will vote for this when they see a strong oversight committee showing the right message and showing the needs that the city faces. I stand before you that this sales tax is not for you. It's not for me. It's not for really any of the committee members, but it's for our future. It's for their future too. So take that into consideration. And I will say, lastly, there was a conversation about it, but my support will immediately end if there is something about just a specific sales tax, because I don't think we can ignore any issue of city services as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chavarin Jr.
I'm Lois Bentley. I live in Hanford, and I was on the Revenue Measure Committee as well. I really appreciate that the council decided to create the committee to look at the budget. So it wasn't a unilateral. You involved your citizens, and I commend you for that. And the city employees, they were very diligent in their providing data and educating the committee. They were thorough, and they answered questions, provided data, when asked. So we had a good rapport, and it was actually a really pleasant experience serving on this committee. Their professionalism was appreciated. I voted in favor of the proposed tax increase because what stood out to me, among the many things, and as Mr. Chavarin said, they're all important, but one that really stood out was that the city's current level of staffing is at that 90s, it's at a minimum, and it's what we were in the 90s, right, over 35 years ago. And to me, that's unacceptable, especially given how our population has increased in the past 25 to 30 years. Like everyone else, I don't like taxes. I don't like to pay more for things. I love a good bargain. But as a citizen, I believe that I bear a responsibility to provide for our city, whether it's keeping it safe, following the laws, serving on a committee, and if increasing our taxes to help generate this income, if that's the case, then I'm in. I think it's what good citizens do. There's no shortage of concerned citizens who will remind the council and others of past misdeeds and, done by town leaders and decisions that were made and why the can was kicked down the road. And it's great that we have the freedom to be able to stand up and do that. But I don't think it's right to hold back from our citizens the appropriate level of safety or to delay improvements based on upset over past transgressions. It's time to learn from mistakes, if you will, but just keeping, we need to keep our city safe and move forward by honoring the vote of the Revenue Measure Committee in favor of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Bentley.
Hello, committee. This is Andre Barona, and I was part of the RMC, one of the committee members. I'm here because I wanted to, sorry if I'm late, but I wanted to cover some points that we come to see during the 20 hours and plus examining all the budgets and everything else. During these 6 weeks, we actually got a very good understanding of where the city stands. And the situation is not good. Now, the question was if we recognize that there was a need in the revenue stream, and if the revenue stream that we should pursue was the tax revenue. I think fairly, my suggestion was that there is a need and we should raise it. Now, I personally, this is my personal comments about this, and I think I voiced it quite a bit during the meeting. I have some concerns regarding the fact that it should actually go on the ballot now. I personally don't think that this is a good time to put it on the ballot, and honestly, it is because you guys don't have much trust from the public. If you put something on the ballot that is requesting to have a tax increase, I don't think really people trust on you to use that tax revenue in the right way. And that said, because I was looking at this council when it was elected to see finally some changes done to listen to the public, and every time you guys got the chance to do it, it didn't happen. Now, why? I do have my my theory behind it, and I analyzed some of the meetings in the past. I actually reviewed some of the meetings that were recorded, and I noticed that there is quite a bit of a constant legal advice that steps in, guiding you in a certain way. And most of the time, you guys take the stand of the legal counsel that you were provided. I think that this is the opposite. You guys were called over here to make the call of the public, and the legal should help you guys doing what the public wants. If the legal counsel doesn't back you up, you should probably look for other counsel. That's my personal stance. Another problem that I do have is with Park and Recreation. Park is taking the lead, and the presentation that we had from Brad was actually concerning, in my opinion, because taking the lead on expanding the city, expanding the park, and expanding things even before we can catch up with it is going to put a strain on the rest of the departments, and Brad is not concerned about it whatsoever, and he was very blatant about it. So just keep that in mind when you see that coming up.
Thank you, Mr. Barone.
Good afternoon, Council. Jack Schwartz, Hanford. I want to hit a couple micro issues before we talk about the macro. My recollection is a couple years ago, the City Council instructed the staff to increase the budget for the PICs for the streets. I don't remember exactly when that was, but when somebody said that the budget hadn't been increased, my memory may be incorrect, but I think that needs to be looked at. The other thing, I very much appreciated the presentation. What I didn't see was a comparison of the dollar amounts needed for the different things versus the revenues. Okay, so that if you're going to make a decision as to what the sales tax increase should be, if you're going to make that decision, it has to look, I guess, for staffing as well as capital improvements over time. And I didn't see that comparison in there. I heard there might be some attachment, but I'll tell you, when I tried reviewing it on my iPad, there were connectivity issues. I could not get the PDFs to download. It was very frustrating. Now, the other thing, though, is compare the survey that was discussed and the needs there and how negative people feel about important things versus what needs to be done. There needs to be a strategic planning session. Each council member needs to come up, and we need a 1 or 2 sentence mission. And then you have to look at the 5, 6 departments and say, how are we going to do that? You need to build that strategic plan and show the community what the strategic plan is and how it's going to be implemented, both with current revenues as well as what would happen with the new revenues. Because you can't mix current spending and capital improvement spending from an accounting perspective. Okay, you've got to know what the budget is, and I fully agree with everything that's been here. The staff here, from the gardener to the top of the line supervisors, they care about this city. They work hard for this city. Nothing here should be interpreted to mean that the city staff is doing a crappy job, because that's wrong. But you need to be able to show the community this is, in one or two sentences, what we want for Hanford. And then how each department will meet that in a strategic plan setting over the next 2 or 3 years, 5-year plan, so that it can be adjusted and looked at both in relation to now as well as to what happens with a sales tax increase. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schwartz.
Kimber Regan. I am 100% for doing a tax increase, not because anybody wants to pay anymore, but because I know that there's certain services that we need, especially our fire department, our police departments. Public safety is something that we're very, very fortunate that we have the amazing people that we have that are helping us in those departments. But we need to take and have more. They need our support to take and make it easier for them to do their job. Okay. I know that it's hard for people to take and get by on their bills now with the water increases and some of the other things that have already been done. But I feel like it's something that is needed. But as several people have said, our city council has lost the trust of the people. And I feel like until you guys can take and earn that back, and it's going to take effort to do it because you guys have blown it with most of the public, it's going to take that trust before the public is going to get behind you and vote for that. And until you guys realize that, you got a big battle ahead of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Regan.
Jim Nelson, City of Hanford. I'd like to reiterate the same thing that's going on. The council has lost our respect to do the right job, the right thing for what's needed for our city. They're not listening to us, and it's sad to say that. But I'm torn between the needs and what will actually happen. So if it does ever pass, we do need an oversight committee, because the oversight committee is the one that's going to help us direct the funds where they need to be. And I hope that we're able to make that happen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rob Bentley, City of Hanford. I'm not here representing anybody but myself. I don't claim to have us, all of us, a lot of people, just me. So please understand that. I find it interesting that the Revenue Measure Committee is shooting for a 65 as far as the PCI for roads. In education, that's still almost a failing grade of a D. So I know there's a lot of work to be done there. Another issue as far as the roads go is we have weather concerns. We've seen what the increasing rain has done to the roads. We now have more than ever, we have heavy electric vehicles. At a recent council meeting, I think I even spoke on it with CART buses wanting to expand the size of their vehicles with the new transit station. That was one of the things that they were quoted at, is they wanted larger buses. So we're going to have heavier equipment on these roads than ever before. So I think 65 is great. It's a start, but I think we all agree that we need better roads. In regards to the fire department, we're getting near graduation season. We're getting closer to 4th of July, and we're getting closer to illegal fireworks. And I know that if a neighbor is shooting off illegal fireworks, and I want to call the fire department to have them come and investigate, it's going to be a low priority because they're putting out fires, and people often complain. I say, wait, I said I'm only representing myself. I complain sometimes about illegal fireworks, and I just would like to see them there sooner. And then finally, one more point. Continuing to kick the can down the road again cannot be an option. We've done that, and we've seen that, and we're paying the price currently. And my final statement is I'd like to thank everybody that's here tonight, and especially the people that have spoken. I have seen online people speaking about issues and concerns that they have, and to me, this many empty seats is embarrassing for this important topic, and I know they'll be probably full in an hour or so to talk about some of the other topics, but I just wish there were more people here because I think coming and speaking before the council or speaking directly to a council member is way more important than sitting behind a keyboard typing on social media. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, seeing no other public comments, I will go ahead and close the public comments section. Council, do we have any comments that you would like to state? Councilwoman Morrow.
Yeah, I just want to address the whole, everybody saying that it's not, well, not everybody. We've got a handful of people saying now's not a good time to put this on the measure because there's a lack of trust in government. When has there ever been a trust in government? I mean, that's one of the reasons why I ran, was because there were issues going on. I know that people that were on here before me ran because there were issues going on. There's always issues happening. There's always concerns about how things are going in the government. So to the effect of kicking the can down the road, it would be just an excuse to kick the can down the road because tomorrow it'll be something different. We definitely, I hate this because I don't want to speak in favor of any tax increases. Like it really, it hurts me. It really, really does. But I will just speak about the fact that since spending habits have been called into question, costs have increased, and that's also because of the more centralized power, more centralization of our monies, as we've talked extensively about that, and the unfunded mandates that have come down. Prevailing wages was not a thing of the past, but it is now. And it increases all of our projects by 40% at least. All of these other things that are requirements and why we have to have extra staffing. And then on top of that, just trying to attract people and quality people to work for our cities and staying competitive with everybody else. So it keeps compounding every single year. And it's difficult, especially at the local level when you are trying to be very fiscally responsible. And I hope my husband doesn't take this the wrong way when since he works for the federal government. And the other day, they blew up $8 million in a test, $8 million. And that's the kind of funding that the federal government gets to have. The state gets to have an exorbitant amount of budget. Where are we at? $90 billion negative and rising or whatever. We don't even come close to that. But, $4 million makes a huge difference for us. $23 million makes a huge difference for us. But it's pennies compared to what the federal and the state government puts out there. So that's as far as I'll go with speaking and, dare I say it, in favor of all of this. But just some points that I think that needed to be made. But yeah, if this is what we decided to do and move forward on this, we can't kick the can down the road. There's never a good time to put this on the ballot. there's always questions about, you know, how people feel about local government or government in general. So I think I'll end it with that.
Thank you very much.
Excuse me. I just want to thank the Revenue Committee for taking the time to bring all this to us, all the hard work that was involved. Everyone, regardless of how you feel about it, I want to thank you for taking the time. And also everyone who came here to this meeting to let us, the council, know what you think and how you feel about about a revenue measure that could make a difference for our community. And it's important that you continue to participate this way. And let's just hope that we as a council, will provide the leadership that's needed for our community to make sure that we continue to have your trust. Thank you.
Vice Mayor.
So I hear about transparency and trust. And transparency and trust has got to be an open book. It's got to be a shared thought. It's got to be people coming in and offering, be able to offer their opinion, right? That's what transparency is. And for us to provide you as the community the information needed and necessary to move forward to make decisions. It's critical. But when you share the information and you share the facts and they don't agree with those decisions, now you're the bad guy. And there's a couple things people have to realize. There's two forms of city governance. One of them is a mayor council, and the other one is a council manager. And we are a council manager form of government. And what does that mean? So local government and municipalities, council members are elected by the voters. Council members are then selected to serve as a mayor, and the mayor's form of governance has no formal authority outside the council, serving largely ceremonial role in the council chairperson. Okay, so the city council manager is there to primarily legislate a body and appoint the executive officer called the city manager to oversee the day-to-day municipal operation, budget drafts, implement and enforce council's policy and legislative updates or initiatives. That's our job. Our job is to provide policy and legislative initiatives. That's the council's job, not to run the day-to-day operations of the city. And that's where I think the disconnect is. The city manager and staff are the ones, and we've heard it here tonight, are the ones that handle the day-to-day operations of this city. And the people in this community support them. There's some that may not. That's okay. But they're there. They were hired to do the job and handle the day-to-day operations. So how do you build transparency and trust? Give you the information. Provide you the information to make a decision. That's what I can do. And that's what I've done for the last year and a half almost. Some people want to hear the information. Some people ask for the information and then don't want it. Okay, but the bottom line is all I can do is offer that information and meet and share that information with the people that I can. Let's not lose sight of the big picture. The city does not have a spending problem. It has a revenue problem. In order to improve the services that we need to improve, we need to increase the revenue. Now, I was hoping to hear tonight, which I understand we're going to hear in June, is what that might look like if the council decides to move forward with that. Don't let the loud noise distract you. Don't let the loud noise distract you. Look at the quality of life, and that's what you've heard here tonight. How do we improve the quality of life for our city? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Timing. Timing was brought up this evening. And my question is, if not now, when? Next year, when inflationary costs are even higher? You know, our inflation, the inflationary reports just came out and it's still going up. This tax measure is brought to the voters. It's not voted upon. It will be voted upon us for as a voter of this city. But the four individuals that sit before you are not the people that are imposing this tax on anybody in this city. It is voted upon by the citizens and the voters in this city. They will make the decision if they want to have a sales tax increase or not. It is our job to present them with the information. It's our job to present them with what are the needs, what is the status of our city. And it's going to be the community, it's going to be the voters in November that will ultimately, if we have to get 50+1 or if we have to get 2/3, and I know the California Supreme Court is still deciding upon that. Now, I believe it's tomorrow or the next day. They'll be making those decisions. But if not now, when? And when we look at the PCI of our roads, when we look at the conditions of our dispatch and broken lines that have happened and destruction that has happened and where they're at, the number of our police force to keep our community safe. I believe I heard that when we had one station out on Lacey Boulevard there were 10 firefighters that fit that station. We have less firefighters now at 3 stations than we did back then with 1 station. Less firefighters. Our city deserves better. Our city deserves better. And when it is going to be presented to the citizens and to show that the need, just the pictures alone, but that city, members of the community can walk to different parts of this city and see that there is a need. When we talk about transparency, when we talk about trust, has the citizens looked at the budget? It's online. It's at their fingertips. And I know one member of the audience mentioned about keyboard warriors. Well, I think the keyboard warriors could go to Hanford.City, look at the budget, and see how the money has been spent, how the balanced budgets have been, where that money is. And every month, they could go, and it's posted about where the people's money has gone. Every transaction is posted on Hanford.City. It's posted on our website that people can go and look and see exactly where their sales tax dollars, their property tax dollars are being spent. In thinking about this, I had 2 non-negotiables. One, before even bringing a revenue measure tax to the citizens, must have a detailed plan on how we are going to spend the money. A detailed plan, check. A detailed plan to see and put a committee together to see what are the needs and what we need to do and what areas we need to focus on. That's a non-negotiable, because if I'm going to, and I'm not a tax guy, but if I'm going to vote for a tax, I want to know where my money is going. Before being on council, I thought 7.25% stayed here all the time. And I was like, this number doesn't add up. Why isn't the city doing their job? They take in $271 million in sales tax revenue over 2 years. What do we have for it? Then you know 87% goes to the state of California. And then what we get in return. We have a detailed plan, and June 4th, we're going to go into more detail on the June plan. I agree with Mr. Bentley. He said this whole room should be filled at that time. This whole room should be filled so people can get the information. We have it on live stream. People share on social media so people can get the information about our needs. Not necessarily our opinions, but what our needs are. Because when they look just at the facts and the needs that this city has, I think this sales tax measure would pass overwhelmingly. My second non-negotiable, and I used Kingsburg as an example earlier, but they had a citizens oversight committee. It's not going to be decided upon us on the council, but it's the citizens oversight committee that looks at the money and the revenue that has been coming in, that 1% or whatever percentage that is, that's coming in, and how it should be dispersed out. It's the citizens are telling where the citizens' money should go. And so I think an oversight committee, for me, is a non-negotiable. A detailed plan is a non-negotiable. And looking at the study session, or I should say the staff reports, 1%. That's my opinion. 1%. It'd be that $19 million that we would need to get all of those areas that we need a new police station for the safety of our community, increase our officers, increase our firefighters. We have 3 fire stations, and if it's 1 per 10,000, as Mr. Strawn said, we should have 6 fire stations, not 3. And so as I come forward, it's it's always been my goal to earn the trust of the people. I don't see myself as not a trustworthy person. And you're going to know the facts. I will post on social media as what is going on in our city, how it's the facts. And so one last thing. You mentioned, Mr. Strawn, if you bring up the top 7 cities, and Hanford is number 7. At 58,000. The other 25 cities underneath that also have a 7.25%. If you look at it online, they're cities of 10,000, 5,000, 18,000, 23,000. They definitely don't have a highway going by them. They are small cities. We are a growing city with growing needs. And if not now, these needs are not going to go away. These needs are going to increase with the more people that come to our city, going to increase. And the other cities don't have even close to the revenue estimates that the city of Hanford has. And they're at 7.25. But you look at 450 other cities, they all have elected or approved by their citizens to keep 100% of that increase local. And that's what a sales tax measure would be, 100% of whatever the increase is decided upon moving forward. I believe it should be 1%. 100% will stay here in this city. When we complain, I complain that we give too much away, to the state and all that. This is 100% stays here. And it's the oversight committee that will make those recommendations, that will have those conversations with staff to see where that money and how that money is being spent. And I look at it for the future of our city, for the next generations to come. It's a huge measure. And I know that there have been previous measures that have not passed, but I asked, did they have an oversight committee? Did they have a detailed plan? And if I remember correctly, it did not. That's what we need, and that's what I'm going to be aiming for.
Great comments, Mr. Mayor.
That's all I have. Thank you very much, Chairman Devine, Vice Chair Strawn, Director Tavares, and all of the Revenue Measure Committee members. It's always good to have from both sides, pros and cons, and I appreciate everything that you have done over these last 6 weeks. Bring this to us. Thank you very much.